Imagine entering an old house where the silence is more terrifying than any sound. Now, imagine discovering that something or someone is waiting for you inside. What would you do if you knew the only way out is to face the terror lurking in the shadows? Stay until the end, because what happens here will change the way you see the supernatural forever. The Millers arrived at the Whitmore mansion on a chilly autumn morning. The trees surrounding the house, tall and ancient, swayed gently in the wind, as if whispering dark welcomes. The house was everything they had imagined, imposing, with tall windows and a stone facade covered in ivy. For John and Sarah Miller, it was the perfect refuge to raise their children, Emily and Noah, away from the hustle and bustle of the city. However, from the start, there was something unsettling about the house. As they entered through the main door, a loud creak echoed through the hallways, followed by a heavy silence. The air felt cold, even with the sunlight streaming through the stained glass windows. Emily, 8 years old, ran down the hallway excitedly, while Noah, only 5, clung to his mother's hand. "It's like something out of a fairy tale," Emily exclaimed, but Sarah couldn't suppress a shiver. As the family explored the rooms, they came across a large library filled with dusty books and antique furniture. A grandfather clock in the corner marked the hours with a deep sound that seemed to echo in the soul. "This is incredible," John said, looking around. Sarah, on the other hand, felt a slight discomfort, as if she were being watched. By the afternoon, the Millers began to settle in. Sarah was in the kitchen, unpacking boxes, when she heard footsteps upstairs. "John?" she called out, but there was no response. Heading up the stairs, she found Emily in her room, concentrating on drawing. "Did you hear anyone walking?" Sarah asked. Emily shook her head. "No, but I like this room. It's like I have company," she said with an innocent smile. That night, while everyone slept, the silence was broken by a faint whisper coming from the hallway. Sarah opened her eyes, thinking it was Noah needing something. When she stepped out of the room, the hallway was empty. "It must be the wind," she muttered to herself, trying to ignore the chill running up her spine. The next day, Noah refused to enter the room they had prepared for him. "There's someone in there," he insisted firmly. John tried to convince him it was just his imagination, but the child remained frightened. Later, while playing in the garden with Emily, Noah remarked, "The walls talk at night. Don't you hear it?" Emily just laughed, thinking it was a joke. As the sun set once again, the mansion seemed to come alive. The candlelight flickered in the rooms, and shadows danced on the walls. Sarah began to notice details she had overlooked before. Strange marks on the door frames, symbols that seemed to be words in an ancient language. That night, the whispers returned, clearer and closer. Sarah woke up startled, convinced someone was in the room. But when she turned on the light, she saw nothing but emptiness. She felt more unsettled with each passing moment, as if the house was trying to communicate with her. Though they tried to ignore it, the Millers were beginning to understand that the Whitmore mansion held more than just stories of the past. The next morning, the tension in the Whitmore house was palpable. Sarah tried to convince herself that everything was just a coincidence. The wind, the old structure of the house, the noises that were natural in such a large, old place. But something inside her couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. With every step down the hallways, the whispers seemed to intensify, as if the walls, no matter how old they were, had a life of their own. While John was out, handling some details related to the move, Sarah decided to take a deeper look at the basement. The place was dark, with only a dim light illuminating the wooden steps. Each step made the floor creak, and the cold air seemed to embrace her skin. When she finally reached the bottom, she found an old door, partly hidden under piles of boxes and old furniture. She hesitated for a moment, but curiosity won out. The door was locked, but a small latch was easily undone with a tool Sarah found in the kitchen drawer. Upon opening the door, the smell of mold and old earth hit her nose. The room was empty except for an old rocking chair, turned toward a cracked wall. What caught Sarah's attention were the words written in the cracks, as if something or someone had tried to communicate through time. She approached and read aloud, "Do not trust the walls." A chill ran down her spine. The silence in the house now felt suffocating, as though she was being watched. She quickly turned around and headed back to the stairs. When she reached the top, she almost bumped into Noah, who was standing in the hallway with wide eyes. "The chair, it moved," he said, his voice trembling. Sarah hugged him, trying to calm him down. "No, sweetie, it was just your imagination. There's nothing there," she said, though her voice was far from convincing. Noah seemed calmer, but something in his expression made her doubt her own words. That night, as the family ate dinner, the grandfather clock in the living room began to chime louder than usual. The deep sound seemed to reverberate throughout the house, as if time itself were dragging, forcing the inhabitants to listen. Sarah tried to ignore it, but when she looked at John, she saw that he was also uneasy. He didn't say anything, but the expression on his face said it all. After dinner, Emily decided to explore the garden behind the house. It was a vast space, with tall trees and bushes that seemed to hide secrets. She wasn't alone, as Noah discreetly followed her, though he was visibly frightened. When they reached an old oak tree at the back of the property, Emily stopped and looked at a small stone building that was partially hidden by the leaves. She approached cautiously, but when Noah tried to call her, his voice was muffled, as if something was trying to silence him. Emily touched one of the stones of the structure, and immediately, a ghostly scream echoed through the air, causing both of them to run back to the house, terrified and unable to understand what they had just experienced. That night, the silence was almost deafening, but the whispers were louder than ever. It seemed that, finally, something was about to happen in the Whitmore house. In the following days, the atmosphere in the Whitmore house became even more oppressive. What had once seemed like mere discomfort now felt like a tangible presence. Emily and Noah's behavior changed, and Sarah began to feel that they were not just dealing with an old house full of stories. Something was manifesting there, something that wanted to be noticed. Sarah spent her mornings researching more about the history of the mansion, diving into old diaries and letters she found hidden in a drawer in John's office. The documents revealed that, many years before, the mansion had belonged to a farming family that mysteriously disappeared, leaving behind rumors of secret rituals and dark pacts with forces beyond understanding. The family's name had been erased from the records, and any references to them seemed to have been carefully removed, as if someone was trying to conceal their existence. Sarah could no longer ignore the whispers and strange occurrences. She was now convinced that the house was tied to an ancient and powerful evil. Meanwhile, Noah became increasingly withdrawn. He refused to speak about what he saw at night, but the shadows under his eyes and the lost look on his face said it all. Emily, on the other hand, seemed more and more connected to the house. She spent hours alone in the garden, sitting near the old stone building she had discovered with Noah, as if waiting for something. She claimed to see a woman in the window, a woman who watched her and whispered her name. On a rainy afternoon, Sarah decided to investigate the stone structure in the garden. When she arrived, something felt different. The energy around it was charged, as if the very land were in conflict. The door to the small building was ajar, and upon entering, Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The air was thick, and the sense that she was not alone was overwhelming. In the center of the room, an old table was covered with marks, as if something had been dragged across it repeatedly. In the back, a figure appeared, ghostly, with a face Sarah couldn't make out clearly. Before she could react, the figure disappeared like a shadow. She ran back to the house, her heart pounding wildly. Emily and Noah's behavior was becoming more disturbing. Emily spoke about the woman who called to her, and Noah seemed to see shadows moving through the hallways at night. When Sarah went to check the basement again, she found an old box hidden under the wooden floorboards. Inside the box was a leather-bound book, filled with strange symbols and unsettling illustrations. As she flipped through the pages, Sarah began to understand that what was happening in the house was not something that could be explained away easily. The house was alive, and it was hungry for more souls. The pressure was mounting, and Sarah knew time was running out. The house was becoming more hostile, and it seemed that if she didn't act soon, her children would be the next to be drawn into the dark abyss surrounding Whitmore Mansion. She had to uncover the truth before it was too late.